I've done, I've moved everything around because we're going to be shuffling these bits of plywood back and forth, the two pair. Make sure you got them clamped up so they can't shift at any time. I've got screw clamps on all the corners, and I'm going to move them around a little bit as I cut off panels. But I'm going to start with the bottom panel first to get rid of, the first cut's going to be to get rid of all this excess material along the bottom and along the ends to start making this thing lightweight. Also, I've already taken apart underneath this. If you remember earlier in the videos when I made the workbench, there's gaps in between it. Well, when I had to have extra support on the ends for the scarfing, I put in some extra 2x6s I had laying around from an old deck in those empty spots in order to extend them out to support the ends while I was working. Well, now I don't need it in this one particular area, and I'm going to work the plywood this way over this one slot. The only thing you have to remember is there are cross members, 3 of them. And so I'll come along and I'll have an idea where they're at, and I'll stop and I'll move the plywood one way or the other to jump over it with my trusty old Craftsman jigsaw. I bought this probably in 71. It's a scrolling jigsaw where the head will move around. So we've cut a lot of wood, and it still works good. Back when Craftsman was something to be proud of. This is what I was talking about when you can see the blue wall all the way through between that pair of 2x6s. So that'll be the edge that I'll be cutting that will line up with my line that I'll be cutting on top. You can see how close I'm coming to the line. I'm also using my spare hand here to mark where the cross brace is down here, so it's always nice to have a handy hand around. Another thing you want to be doing too is cleaning up after yourself to keep your line clear as you're going along, and then just keep the dust and little grit and stuff to this wood for other uses. So I'll probably come up into here to get to save this, and up into here to save that. Okay, we've got the bottom cut all done. This piece can come off and be stored someplace, and you can see there's a lot of wood here we can reuse for something long. Look for where you're at. Leave a little bit of your dark ink line behind. Just snug up next to it. Make certain that you're 90 degrees along in here, that you don't have one that's out a little bit farther. Just go along and see where you need a little bit of action. Don't try to get too deep in the head of it. It's also a time to kind of take a preliminary look at your quality of your scarves, and I can see my lines, and there aren't any gaps in the joint, even though the run out edges are a little ragged, but that'll get fixed up. But I've got nice good embedment between the two sheets with no voids, and you'll see that each time you cut one of these out how your quality is going. Now the other thing we have to do is make certain that you got a good screw clamp, positive. Get them down near the ends to where you know, these things will leave behind little rings. But down in these areas here, anywhere along within an inch or so, inch and a half of the edge, will be covered with fillets and tape and wood-filled compound. So make sure you get at least 2 clamps so that this baby can't move at all. Okay, something else I always do too, I want to remind you that when I've got the edges flush like this, and I know this will be my exact keel line, I add a 2-inch offset line where I think, well, where I know the center boards are going to be, which is going to be somewhere between 4.5 feet, well, on this piece, between 3.5 and 5.5 on the bottom section. And I put a nice straight line, because when it gets folded together and epoxied and taped, you lose your perspective of where the exact keel center line of the boat is. So I put this 2-inch offset so that when I come to cut in the dagger board trunk opening, I measure off and I know this is my exact center line when both pieces are set together like this. So that's something you know I want to do now. Okay, we've got our first set of panels completely cut out. Now I'm going to turn this around so I can dress up the other side, and hopefully I won't bash out all the fluorescent lights and everything else. And I got my clamps on the end because they have to stay until I get this one edge trued up. They have to stay together, otherwise you'll have dissimilar panels and they won't be symmetrical or mirror images of each other. Okay, because the majority of the grain is going to go this way, and we're cutting around at an angle like that. You want to remember when you're doing anything with the hand plane, whether you're doing a rasp or you're sanding, that if you go against this way, you're going to pull up these big splinters and you're going to hurt yourself. So you want to, in this direction of the arch, you want to go this way. On that direction of the arch, you want to go the other direction. Downhill with the grain, never going up where you might rip out the edge and jam it into your finger. Since the grain is parallel this way and I'm arching down that way, I want to always go in the direction of the arc. Okay, the other, well, I've got them clamped up and I've got the edges all trued up. I'm going to go ahead and it's a good time now to finish everything off panel by panel, so then you don't have to come back. So the first thing I'm going to do while I got nice square edges is I'm going to set a sliding square, and I put a little notch in the end of it so it holds my pencil a little. I've set it at 3/8 of an inch. That is for where I'm going to drill the holes to put the tie wires. So it's the thickness of the plywood, which is say 1/4 inch, 6 millimeters, and add an 1/8. So it's 3/8. So I'm going to take my gauge and just, this will be the drill holes. So where we put in the tie wires. And you'll do that on both sides of the same panel, and then on the flip side you'll do that on it too. Not necessarily for the 3/8 for the drills, because you'll drill this side. But it's nice to have the other line, which I'm going to do now, which is I've set this one at 2 inches, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to mark the second line, and this is basically the edge of the glass tape when I lay it down, of the 2-inch tape. It gives me a nice reference for a steady, consistent edge so that the tape isn't wandering all over the boat or the seam as you're putting it together. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust this out to 1.5 inches for the 3-inch tape. Now if you're doing 3-inch and 4-inch, then it's 1.5 and 2. So now I'll go ahead and put in this other line for the edge of the 3-inch tape that I will lay down, and I will have me a nice consistent edge on that one. Well, I've got it clamped down here. I'm going to do one other thing, is we take, let me get a piece of cardboard.